Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to play around in the Cinnamon desktop. And what I want to do is I want to trick this out to look and feel like a tiling window manager. And so I thought it would be kind of fun to just arrange this and give it the look and feel of a tiling window manager, even though it's actually a floating window manager desktop. But to have the look and also the keyboard shortcuts. So I'm going to set up a bunch of keyboard shortcuts as well and just kind of give it that look. I thought that would put an interesting twist on using a floating desktop environment with the window manager look and feel. And specifically, I'm going to be on Cinnamon, although most of the stuff I'm going to be doing could actually be applied on pretty much any desktop, whether it's XFCE, GNOME, KDE, or what have you. But you'll probably have to tweak and adjust a little bit according to the nuances of your desktop. Now, originally, I was going to do a video on the dark web. But, you know, I got into it and it is really dark. Seriously. I mean, yeah. I can't see a thing. Huh. Yeah, I got nothing.
Boring.
So instead, I wanted to do this. So let's get on with the good stuff. So right now I'm on Linux Mint. And so this is the newest version, 21.3, and it's actually featuring the Cinnamon 6 desktop, which is kind of cool. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me right off the bat is they have a new feature in Mint and Cinnamon, actually, called Actions. So if you're running a newer type distro with the latest Cinnamon, which would be 6, then you should have this available. And Actions is right here in the system settings. And here you can see these are right-click items that are available within Nemo. So Actions, as far as I could tell here, are connected with Nemo. And so if you have files in here that would be relevant to some of these actions, then they'll show up in your right-click. So for example, if I wanted to just click on one of these files, and there's really nothing on the drive right now, so there's not a lot to choose from, but here you have these different items in your context menu here, and whether there's anything relevant or not to the actions, I'm not sure. So here we got compress, and that might be something. So if we go over here, and these are all the things that potentially could show up in your context menu. For example, make a bootable USB stick. So if we had an ISO on this drive and we right-clicked, this actually would be in the context menu that you could select, and you could make a bootable USB stick directly from that ISO. So that's kind of cool. And then mount archives, and these are the things that are available already, set as wallpaper. So again, I don't really have any pictures on here. I suppose if I went in here and I just kind of went to my user folder, share, and then backgrounds, there's probably a picture in here. So we could just like pixel this here just for fun. So we got pictures in here, and so if we right click, you can see the set as wallpaper, and this action corresponds to the action that's in here. And so we could actually remove that if we wanted to. Take that off, and then if we right click, theoretically it should be gone, and it is gone. That's how you can add and remove actions that correspond to specific file types. And so I'm just going to add that back in, and now when we right click, we have it back. And so if I were to hit set as wallpaper, it'll set it as wallpaper. Wow! So that is very cool. I like the addition of the actions there. I think that's kind of what it's all about. And you can also go to download here and get additional actions above and beyond. So you can open something in a remote terminal. You can have a restart Cinnamon action here. So lots of things you can integrate into Nemo. And as far as I know, this is kind of specific to Nemo File Manager. Now I could be wrong, so if I'm wrong, feel free to chime in. But these are all different kinds of actions so far that are available that you can download. And so there's some cool things in there. Direct access to your system settings. Compile and run a C file. That's kind of cool if you're a developer. A lot of cool things. Even restart the Cinnamon desktop which could be handy, I guess, if you're having some kind of crashing problems. Yeah, I just kind of wanted to run across that real quick and give that a mention, since that's a new feature in Cinnamon 6. And if you have a newer version of Cinnamon, you're running a distro like Arch Linux or Linux Mint 21.3, you're going to get that new feature. Let's jump in to make this tricked out to kind of look like a window manager. But first I'm going to mellow out the wallpaper because that's kind of distracting there. So I think I'm going to just kind of put it back to the default, which can't really remember. Here it is, default. Nice. So I'm going to use the set as wallpaper action there and just kind of set that back just to make it a little less distracting there. And so now let's make this look like a window manager. And as I've mentioned many times before, window manager type desktops like BSPWM, QTile, Hyperlin, and so forth have really got me kind of spoiled. I really like having all the keyboard shortcuts and flipping between workspaces so easily and having the tiling and so forth. Now, you don't really get the tiling in Cinnamon and some other desktops like XFCE and KDE and so forth that you would in a specifically tiling window manager. But Cinnamon actually does have some nice features that make you feel like you're kind of in between, like you're a little better than just floating, but not quite tiling. And so if you really gravitate more towards the floating environment, but you kind of like the maneuverability of a tiling window manager, then this might be kind of interesting to you. So I think the first thing I would do before I start doing my keyboard shortcuts, and keyboard shortcuts are probably like 90% of it, but then there's other things too, like for example, we want to come down here and have your bar at the bottom or on top. Generally, I have mine on top, and that's kind of what I would do here. So I would just pop in here and go into panel edit mode. And once we're in panel edit mode, I can just kind of right click on this bar, select move, and then now you can see the other areas around the edges that you can choose from to move your panel bar. And I'm just going to put it up on top. So I'm just going to slide my pointer up here to the top, and then I'm going to click. And then that puts our panel bar up here on top. Nice. And now I want to make it laid out more like what you'd see in a tiling window manager. So I think the first thing I would do is probably get rid of the window buttons here, because in a tiling kind of sense, they're more distracting than anything else. So I would just go over here and click on Applets. And then this will bring up our Applet window here. And then we can see all the things that are in our panel. So the calendar, that corresponds over here to your clock area and your corner bar and so forth. So what we want to do is we just want to scroll down here and find our window list. Actually, not window list. Oops. That must be a grouped window list. So let me slide up here a bit. And there it is. So our grouped window list. So all we got to do is select this and then hit the minus button, and that'll turn it off. As you can see, it's still in the list, but it disappeared up here on the panel. So that's kind of what we wanted to have there. And let's replace that with our workspace switcher. So I'm going to scroll back down here and select the workspace switcher and then hit our plus button. And now you can see that it showed up over here. Cool. But I don't really want it there. I want to move it over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm in panel edit mode right now. In case I didn't mention it, when you right click on the panel, you got this little toggle here. So you can select that, and when you turn that on, then that means you can edit the items on this panel. And what I want to do is I want to slide this over and move it over next to the menu here. Let's just nail it all the way to the end there. There we go. So now I'm going to just take this Linux Mint menu and slide that to the end. There we go. So that worked better. Apparently the sweet spot is real tight right there. If you have trouble getting at the stick, just slam it to the end and then do what I did. Okay, still, here we got our workspace switcher, but it still doesn't really look like it does in a tiling window manager. So I'm going to switch that too. So what I want to do is right click on the workspace thingy there and then select, I think it's select configure if I remember right. And so here we got under type of display a visual representation of the workspaces. If we hit our drop down here, you got an option called simple buttons. So if I hit simple buttons, now we got our numbers like we're used to seeing like on a tiling window manager. Cool. So I'm going to just close that now. And now let's add some more workspaces. On my tiling window manager, I have 9 workspaces up there. Of course, you can put as many as you want. And to add a workspace, you can either right-click and simply select Add a Workspace, and that'll add one at a time. Or you can just go into Manage. And when we go into Manage, we have a little plus button here. And every time we click this, it'll generate another workspace. So let's make 9. So I'm just going to click it 5 more times. And now we got 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So now we got 9 workspaces. And I'm going to come back here and just click this workspace. And now you can see we got 9 up here. So that is looking cool. Excellent. And since I'm in edit mode, I'm going to take my clock and I think I'm just going to slide that into the middle. I kind of like that in the middle. And I got to jump out of edit mode. So I'm going to just turn that off. Now if I just click on it, you can see these are our calendar pops up here. And then I can select date and time settings. And then that'll bring up our date and time settings. And then we can just kind of format our clock the way we like it. 24 hours good for me. You can also add the date on there if you want to have the date. And I'm kind of good with that. And you can also put in the seconds if you want to display seconds as well. So that's where you would do that. Nice. So we're kind of getting the look here, minus the keyboard shortcuts. Now I want to be able to switch to different workspaces here using a keyboard shortcut. And in my tiling window managers, generally I would use super and then a number like super 1, super 2, super 3, and so forth, which corresponds to the workspace. And so what I need to do now is jump into our settings. And so I can just go up to our menu here and then select our settings icon and pop into here. And then if we scroll down into our keyboard, I'm going to select that. And then we want to select shortcut. And then here we got all our shortcuts that correspond to different things, including custom shortcuts. So here under General, for example, we got different things that correspond to our windows and show desktop and so forth. And we also got a run dialog. But what I want to do is I want to be able to close a window. So I'm going to jump down here to Windows. And then if you just select Windows by itself, then you got your basic window commands like maximize, minimize, close, and so forth. And what I want to do is I want to select close window, and you can see Alt F4 is the default for that. In my tiling window manager that I use, BSPWM, I have it set up for Super Q. So I'm going to change that. All we got to do is just click this and then click it again, and then I'm going to press Super Q. And now it's changed here. So now if I want to close a window, all I got to do is press Super Q. And it's out of here. So we got our first keyboard shortcut set up. Nice. So I'm just going to jump back in here again. Keyboard shortcuts. And now let's set up our workspaces. So if we go to workspaces and then direct navigation, here we got our switch to items. So if I want to switch to workspace 1, you can see the keyboard bindings are unassigned. So I want to use Super 1. For this. So I'm going to click this, press Super 1, and then I'm going to go to Workspace 2, and I'm going to do Super 2. Now let's say I'm going to go to Workspace 2. I'm going to press Super 2, and it takes me to Workspace 2. And then go to Super 1, and I'm on Workspace 1. So let's keep going with this. Let's go to Workspace 3, and click that, Super 3. Okay, so now we can go Super 1, Super 2, and Super 3. Now in some setups, if you hit Super 2, you might end up seeing your web browser launch, and you'll be like, WTF, why is my web browser launching? I got it set up for this. Well, it would be because you're using your grouped window list. So if you didn't remove your grouped window list from up here on the bar, then what you would want to do is go into your system settings here, go back into Applets, or you could do it by right-clicking on the bar up there, the panel, and then under grouped window list, you would jump into configure, and then down here at the bottom you got enable super plus number shortcut keys to switch between open apps. So if you have apps open, like Firefox, for example, like I cited before, then you'd end up on the Firefox instead of Workspace 2. For example, if Firefox was on Workspace 1 and you wanted to go to 2, you'd stay on 1 and go into Firefox. So you want to be sure to turn that off if you're using the grouped window list. Of course, we deleted the grouped window list, or I mean disabled it, turned it off. I turned it on for the sake of the example here. But as long as that's off, that's not going to be a factor, and you can use the super 1, 2, 3, 4 to your heart's content. And so I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the process all the way up to 9 here. Okay, so we got that all taken care of. Now we can just scroll through all our different workspaces here, and you can see them all coming up. So that's all good. And it looks like I got the system settings open up in a couple different workspaces there. So yeah. So now we got workspace 1 is the only one that's got something in it. So that's good. Now what I want to do is I want to set up keyboard navigation shortcuts for moving a window to different workspaces. On my tiling window manager, I like to use Super Shift and then the number, and then that'll send it to another workspace. And to do that, we would just go up here to Windows and hit our little drop-down arrow, and then select Enter Workspace. And then here we got all our move keys, so we can do this again, move to Window, Workspace 1, just come back down here and do the same spiel, except now it's Super Shift 1, or it's going to show exclamation point here. And then we just do the same thing again, all the way down the line to all the windows that you want affected. And then that'll set up your ability to move items to different workspaces. So now if I want to move this window right here to workspace 4, I can just press Super Shift 4 and it's off to workspace 4. So now if I press Super 4, now we're here and we can see our window. So cool and groovy. And so I'm going to just move that back to workspace 1, Super Shift 1, and then Super 1, and here we are. So easy peasy. And you can do the same thing for monitors. So if you have a multi-monitor setup and you got a bunch of monitors hooked up, you can do the same thing here as well. And then we got keys for positioning windows and so forth, and the defaults, Alt F8 to resize, to move, Alt F7 and so forth. Center a window if you want a key for that. Typically I don't do much with that. Now if I want to use some basic tiling settings, so to speak, I can press like super right arrow and it'll push it over to the right hand side. If I open up something else like maybe my terminal, I can press super left arrow and it'll pop it up here like this. So you got kind of like pseudo tiling here, which is kind of cool. And of course you can switch these around as well. I can hit super left arrow and it'll shrink back down again, or I can move it over, but then it's going to cover up this guy. So I can super right arrow twice and it'll move it over and pop it here. And then we have our tiling and snapping. So push tile left, we got super left, which has already been assigned, and these are defaults here. And then push tile up, of course, would be super up arrow and down arrow. So that's all kind of cool, and that really comes in handy. That's actually kind of nice to use and easy to get used to as well. And then under our system hardware, here we can assign keys for our brightness, and by default they pretty much got the standard keys here for your brightness and so forth already assigned, which is nice. Take a screenshot, I think is shift print. We'll take a screenshot of the area, cool. So let's see if that actually works. So there's shift print, and it does. Cool, excellent. So I can sit there and do a screenshot, and there we go. Awesome. And yeah, I might as well save that. Our pictures folder is empty anyway. Cool. And then here we got our launchers. So these are different things by default. Launch terminal, Control Alt T will bring that up. That's not a bad keyboard binding. If you're using something else, like I think I use Super Enter, you could change it to that if you like, or whatever is comfortable. So I could go Super Enter and then it'll just do that, just like that. So easy peasy. Couldn't be easier to do this stuff. Now let's go to our volume, because this is actually kind of interesting. Here we have our volume down and up and mute. And so just like in my window manager, they're assigned to the keys. However, if I use my volume up, and here's my audio lower and audio up. So if I use my keys, and if you look up here in the corner, we have our volume control here. And so if I move my keys, right now it's at 46%. If I bump that up one, it goes up to 50 and then 55. So it's moving in increments of 5. And I don't like that. 5 is like way too much. I'd rather have it move like in increments of 1 or 2. And with the volume control on Cinnamon, the default, you can't do that. But there is a solution. What we can do is, I'm just going to leave this window open. We can right click on our panel here, select Applets, and then we go to download. And so what we want to do is we want to go and look for an app here, an applet called, I think it's called Sound 150 or 150% or something like that. So as soon as this is done populating our items here, I got to type that in the search window and see if it works. Okay, so we populated this in here with our items. So up here in the filter, I'm going to type in sound. I think that's what it, yeah, there it is, sound 150%. So what we want to do is replace this with sound 150%. So I'm going to download this and then go back to manage. And then here we got sound 150%. So I am going to add that. So if we hit our plus button here, it'll add it. And so now you can see that our volume is added up here, our sound 150%. So now I'm going to come down here to our default sound, and I'm going to turn this off. So I'm going to select it and hit the minus button, and that'll turn that off. So now we got our audio here, and I can actually move that if I want to have it back on the end. Personally, I kind of like it there better, so I think I'm just going to leave it there. However, to move it, of course, you would just go into panel edit mode and then slide it over just like we did before. So now that we got our sound 150, if I go here and I hit my key, you can see by default it still moves in increments of 5 just like the regular one, except now we have some recourse. We can go in here into our settings and we can go down and select. So I got to remember where that is. I think it might be under sound. Here it is. And here you see our plus minus. This is our increments here. So we can change this to 1% or 2%. I kind of like 2% personally. But now if we hit our keys, now you can see that it increases and decreases by 2%. So a lot more flexibility there. And to me, that's a lot more civilized than jumping 5% at a time. So that is a solution to the sound thing. And everything else, I probably would just leave at their defaults. Here you can add in your percentage. That's actually not bad. So maybe I'll just keep that there, actually. Now we can kind of see it without having to mouse over it. So yeah, I'm good with that. So lots of nice little tweaks in here. This is a very flexible volume control. I really like it. Here's where we got our Super Shift S to show a menu up here, or we can just right click and bring this up and get direct access to our sound settings as well. So all really nice. I definitely give the Sound 150 double thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, so that solves that issue with the audio. Then we got our universal access settings and then custom shortcuts. So maybe you want a custom shortcut for different items. Like, for example, I want to launch Nemo without going in here. So if you go to launchers here, we got home folder. We could just, home folder here will bring up Nemo. So if I hit Super E, by default, that'll bring up Nemo. And so if you're good with Super E, then you can leave it like that, or you can change it to something else like Super N for Nemo or whatever. But I think Super E is good. But how about something that's not on the list? And I like that there's a shortcut for the calculator. I don't think I have a calculator button on my keyboard though. So if I wanted to change that, I could. Since I don't have a calculator button, I probably can't change it back to a calculator key without having a calculator key. But it doesn't matter because I don't have one. So I would probably change that to like, I don't know, Super C. How about C for calculator? So now if I hit Super C, then it will bring calculator up just like that. So things are looking good. They're coming together. And I can pick out some app that's not on this list, like, see what we got here. Not too much installed here by default, but how about Hypnotics? Yeah, that's a cool one. So let's make a shortcut for Hypnotics. So what I'm going to do is come down to custom shortcuts and then add a custom shortcut. And then I'm just going to type the name in here, Hypnotics. And then we can just type Hypnotics again for the command. Or if you have an app that's in a specific folder, we can just hit this. And then we can navigate out to the application that you want to add in there. But for Hypnotics, since it's an installed application, it should just be right in the path. So I should be able to just type in Hypnotics. And I did all lowercase there. And we'll add that in. And so now let's give it a key. So I'm just going to give it, how about Super H? H for Hypnotics. And now that should bring it up. So I'm going to hit Super H. And there it is. Excellent. So now we got Hypnotics. So that's how you would do a custom keyboard shortcuts. And of course, if I was going to be daily driving this, I'd probably be adding a bunch of things in here like Hypnotics, probably Inkscape and OBS Studio and what have you. So these would all go right in here. And I guess I can just close the calculator here. Another thing, I like having my own key binding for the browser. So if I go back up here to Launcher, we got Launch web browser here. And it's got www. I don't have a www key on my keyboard, at least not that I know of. So I'm going to use the key binding that I use in my BSPWM window manager. So I'm going to just click that and then select Super B. And now I can launch my browser just by pressing Super B. And of course, if I want to send that over to Workspace 2, I can Super Shift 2, and it's off to Workspace 2, then Super 2, and I can follow it over there. I don't know of any way that you can have your item, like your browser, automatically open up in a different workspace like you can in BSPWM and so forth. There's probably a way to do it in the config file, but there's no obvious way to do it visually that I know of in Cinnamon. And if there is, please let me know. Leave a comment down below and let me know, because I would really like to know that if there is a way to do that. Otherwise, I would guess that you have to get into the Cinnamon config somewhere and mess with it manually. It's probably not easy. I don't know. So there you go. I think I covered all the basics and the not so basics. And I guess there's just one more thing I'd just kind of like to add. Just a little side note or an aside. I'm in Linux Mint 21.3, and I noticed that the Numlock is not activated by default. And so typically where I would expect to find the Numlock setting or the toggle switch would be right here where we just were in the keyboard settings here, but it's nowhere to be found. In fact, I didn't find it anywhere in here. So I guess what the solution to that is, and I'm not really sure why that's not actually there by default, but if you're a Numlock person like me, the solution's relatively easy, or maybe I should call it a workaround, I don't know, but I'm going to press Super Enter, our shortcut key that we set up for our terminal, and we can just do a sudo apt, I'm going to magnify that a bit, install Numlock X. And that's a little app that kind of runs in the background and will let you have a Numlock. So we'll just kind of let that install. And then once it's installed, all we got to do is add it into our startup. So scrolling up to here, and we got startup applications. And then we'll just hit our plus key, do a custom command. And then for our name, we'll just call it Numlock X, so we don't forget. And then the command simply is Numlock X. Actually, what is that? Let me just go in here and type it in the console. Okay, yeah, I guess that's all we need. I was thinking we might need an argument, but apparently not. So just Numlock X, and then a comment. You don't really need a comment, but if you want to, you can just say Numlock X turns on the Numlock. And we'll leave the startup delay at 0, the default, and we'll hit add. And so now Numlock X will activate every time you start up, and then you'll have your Numlock turned on. So that's a workaround for that. So I just thought I'd throw in that little aside there. If I was just going to make this look a little more homey, and it was mine, I would probably just jump back into the applets here, go to download, and select weather, because I like having a weather on there. So that would probably be something I would just add, just because I like it. And then go back to manage and select it and hit the plus button. And boom, there it is. Wow, -6. And of course, if you want to change that to Fahrenheit, you can just pop in the settings there and select Fahrenheit. And that might be under presentation, maybe. Okay, must be other options. Oh, here we go, temperature unit. So if you want to manually set it here instead of automatic, you could set that to Fahrenheit instead of Celsius. That'll change it to Fahrenheit. If you're living in America or somewhere where they use Fahrenheit, then you're good to go. So that's, I guess, the other thing I would just add, but that's just a little tweak that's kind of outside the whole thing. So there you go. Now it's kind of got the window manager look, and if you even wanted to take it a step further, you could also add in a tiling applet called GTile, and that's kind of a basic tiling thing. Personally, I kind of like the built-in tiling that's in with Cinnamon here, the basic features like your super left arrow to pop this over and super right arrow for this guy. And, you know, for me, that's just fine. But if you want to mess with GTile, you could just go into the system settings here and open up the extensions right here. And then that should probably give us GTile. And there it is right in near the top of the list. And then you got transparent panels. If you want to make that look a little semi-transparent, you can add that in there as well. And then GTile as well. And see, your panel is now really transparent. I'm not sure I'd want it quite that transparent. So personally, back here under Manage, I would probably see if there's a way to back that up a little bit by selecting that. So I got to hit the plus button, I think. There we go. Now it's activated. So that kind of threw me off because it went transparent before I actually turned it on. Not sure what's up there, but now if I go in my settings, I think I might have some. We got shadow for the transparency, but yeah, I'm not really seeing anything here that lets you adjust the level of transparency. So yeah, I guess not. And then you can use the current theme style, and that essentially just kind of turns it off here with the current theme. Remove transparency. Oh, here we go. Semi-transparent. So there we go. Yeah, to me, semi-transparent works. So that's kind of cool. Fully transparent's a little overkill for my taste, but I don't mind a little semi-transparency. Personally, I really like it even solid. And then you got GTile here, so you can activate that. I don't really use GTile that much, but if you want to mess with it, you can pop in here and go into the settings, and then you can check out all the different behavior here. It kind of works on a grid, and you got animation effects and so forth. And this is something I haven't really messed with that much, but it's not really the same kind of tiling from my limited experience that you would get, you know, like in a real tiling window manager, but it does give you some cool things. And I think Super G, yeah, here it is. Super G is the default to bring up the tiler here. And so it kind of lets you mess around with things. So like I could come over here and lay out where I want to tile this window. Maybe I want it on this whole side here. So I can just mouse over this whole section and it'll show me where I want to put it. And then when I click, it'll send it over there. So that's actually kind of cool. But every time you want to do something, you got to Super G to get back into here. So now if I want it maybe here, do a click. And then maybe I just want it along the top like that. Then click again. So that's kind of how you do that. It's kind of cool. Super G, and then come over here, click, and then lay it out, click again, and there you go. So that's kind of interesting. So that's GTile, and I thought I would just kind of give that a shout there real quick. And there you go. I think I covered everything. I can't think of anything else I forgot. So here's our pseudo tiling window theme or look or whatever you want to call it for Cinnamon. And again, a lot of the keyboard shortcuts, you can just apply that in XFCE or other ones, and it follows the same kind of format. So very little tweaking you'll have to do if you're using a different desktop, but I thought this would be fun to do with Cinnamon. Cinnamon's a really great desktop, and it just works really well with this kind of layout. And if I was running Cinnamon, this is exactly how I'd have it set up. So there you go. I hope this was helpful, and if it was, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. If it wasn't helpful, give me 2 thumbs up. Be a rebel. Don't forget to hit subscribe too if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.